Hello and welcome to The Big Picture. The proliferation of the new media and the social media has brought with it many new areas of problems on the legal front. The IT Act, which has been around for some years now, has sought to provide the legal framework to deal with some of the problems which is cropping up more often now. While some of these problems are affecting ordinary users of the internet, the service providers also have their own set of objections. The Supreme Court is at present involved in hearing a petition filed by the Internet and Mobile Association of India, among others, challenging Section 66A and Section 79(3)(c) as well as 80 of the IT Act, which deals with punishment to those found violating the law. Government, meanwhile, has upheld its right in a petition before the court to issue takedown notices to control and restrict certain content and has called it reasonable restrictions. We will discuss today the objections of the service providers as well as website owners and ordinary users of the net and the position of the government on these matters and whether reasonable restriction argument is valid. To discuss this, I have with me Pavan Duggal, advocate who has specialized in information technology issues, Rajesh Charya, President Internet Service Providers Association, Shivam Vij, Associate Editor Scroll.in, and on the phone line from Mumbai is Vinit Goenka, National Co-Convener of the BJP's IT cell. Welcome to all of you. Vinit Goenka, I would like to come to you first. Your government has taken a stand in the court saying that certain reasonable restrictions have to be imposed as far as Section 66A is concerned, as also as far as Section 79(3)(c) is concerned. So how do you defend this? Because if I remember correctly, when the BJP was in the opposition, it had taken a certain stand which was not exactly what it is taking now.
Yeah, let me tell you very interesting. When we were in opposition and what I talked about, it was myself itself which I was opposing 66A, and our stand is very clear. There is a differentiation between censorship and reasonable restriction on the basis which will create any kind of discomfort in the user or the reader. What the government wants to say and what we all want is that there should be reasonable restriction, which is also right, because it should, if it has not been restricted, then it can create chaos or disharmony among the society. Whereas we are against censorship or any kind of gagging of the media, whereby the government wants to this. The earlier government used to use the Tool of Information Technology Act or 66A as a tool of gagging as a censorship. But the current government is talking about responsible content writing. So this too has to be understood. And as a society, as a country, we should be responsible on whatever we write on the media. It can create discomfort, it can create disharmony, it can create a bad taste. So if that is written, then of course, everybody who is sensible, everybody who is in the society will not like to have that on board. But censorship or gagging, I think, nobody would like to do that. Neither. If you see the spirit and the letter which the government is talking, is exactly what the common man wants. That
common man.
Yeah, absolutely. The common man has been taken care of, and they want that we should be responsible when we write. We cannot use unparliamentary words. We cannot use things which will create disharmony between religion or faith or caste, creed, or anybody.
Absolutely. And these are all in the Constitution. Shivam, responsible writing. As far as there is responsible writing, there needs to be reasonable restriction.
I think what the BJP spokesperson just said is A-class pin doctoring. It's as if we will not understand what he means. What he's saying is that we will not do censorship, but we will have the censorship law. We will retain the law, but we will not do censorship. Please trust us because we are nice people. No, there is no such thing. There are times the Congress government also saying the same thing. The previous government was the position of this government and the previous government on 66 is absolutely the same, which is shameful considering that in the previous government, Mr. Arun Jaitley was standing up in the Rajya Sabha and talking about 66A and other forms of internet censorship and comparing it to the emergency. So now something that the BJP was calling the emergency is suddenly defensible because we are nice people, we will not do it. I do not understand this. 66A is ultra virus of the Constitution, which is a question the Supreme Court is currently considering. And I hope and I urge and I pray before the Supreme Court of India that they will declare 66A null and void.
Okay.
It's a law that says that anything that Girish Nikam, that anything that you find objectionable in something I wrote.
That is exactly the point.
I can go to jail for it's a non-cognizable offense. People are put in jail for this. I mean, how can the BJP defend something so egregious? This is the...
Let me get Pavan in. Pavan, responsible writing, what Vinit Goenka is talking about and what the government will also be talking about, how do we, I mean, is the act very clear about what is responsible writing, what is irresponsible writing, how is 66A used? I have noticed today when I was going through some of the cases, certain amount of case laws have already, built up on this as far as this act is concerned. What does the law say?
Well, the law was never meant to be a primer for responsible writing.
Absolutely.
And the law has not even wanted to go in the direction. However, the law has gone ahead and come up with provisions which are so broad and are so comprehensive that it engulfs within it large number of interpretational aspects. So, for example, when you write something which is grossly offensive or menacing in character, the law says that becomes an offense. Who are the two people who will determine that's an offense? Either the complainant or the police or the court. Now, that being so, you're giving unbridled powers in the hands of people because the Constitution of India grants you the fundamental right to freedom of speech and expression under Article 19 of the Constitution. Under Article 19(2), we have some reasonable restrictions. But the concept of what's grossly offensive or menacing in character is not found in reasonable restrictions. Even the reasonable restrictions don't say that you should not write something which you know is false, but which has been written for the purposes of causing annoyance, inconvenience, ill will, hatred, enmity. So I think some components of the Section 66A have sought to be inspired by, shall I say, the parameters under 19(2), but I think they have just gone far beyond, and that's why there's a huge challenge to the constitutional validity of Section 66A today.
What is your view on the government stand now? The government now says, the takedown notices to internet service providers, it's a reasonable restriction on the fundamental right to speech and expression. It's a necessary safeguard against those being defamed online.
Please understand, let's not confuse between takedown notices on the one hand and what 66A says.
No, yes, I want, because it is also connected to 66A, what happens?
Correct. 66A, the problem is it's now being more misused, like we used to have the dowry law. Now in the context of digital environment, it's the dowry equivalent, which is Section 66A, which is being misused. But the takedown provisions are on a completely different platform. In fact, all intermediaries in India are now governed under the Information Technology Act. And intermediary, the way they have defined, is extremely wide. It includes any person who, with respect to any particular electronic records. I'm talking about Section 21W of the Information Technology Act, which defines what's an intermediary. So, if you are on behalf of another person receiving, storing or transmitting any particular electronic record, you become an intermediary. You provide any service with respect to that record, you become an intermediary. If you are a telecom service provider, internet service provider, web hosting company.
So, all of us are intermediaries.
99%
of us can be
intermediaries. Now, if you're intermediaries, Section 79(2)(c) says that you must exercise due diligence while you discharge your obligations under the law. And of course, the law further says that the government has been empowered to come up with rules and regulations. The government came up with the Information Technology Intermediary Guidelines Rules 2011. Now, they mandate that if any person who is aggrieved by any content which is patently defamatory or in violation of the law, he can actually notify the service provider, and the service provider is duty bound to act within 36 hours and take it down. So the taking down is only in context of content which is in violation of the parameters given under the IT rules.
Okay. Now, so let us bring in the service providers. Rajesh Charya, the question is, right now one of the questions which the Supreme Court is looking at and about which the government has filed a petition also is about you people, about the service providers. But as Pavan says that all of us can come under the ambit of providers, service providers, if you go by the actual definition. But what are your actual objections and what are your grievances?
The very disputed question whether the service providers comes under the intermediary or not, because we are not putting any content from our side. We are just an highway service provider wherein the user are accessing the data which is residing in anywhere into the data center. But what we want from the service point of view is that right now we are into the 16 to 18 millions of broadband connectivity India wise, and we have to go 600 million broadband by 2020. Lot of way to go, but still we are struggling with the content restriction or censorship or anything. From the services point of view, what we feel that there should not be any restriction, but yeah, awareness should be there into the user as well as to the hosting company or the person who is publishing their data to the internet cloud. They should be very well, you can say, educative or responsible. We should not, the government or anybody should not come into the picture for controlling anything, because this media doesn't require any control, because this media is being used by the educative person, the user as well as the content hoster.
Okay, Vinit, what do you have to say to that? The service provider, now there is a problem. The service providers don't know what they are.
I'll answer both.
Yes.
I'll answer to the first reaction of the first gentleman who also reacted on the government's and Jaitleyji's.
Shivam Vij.
Shivam ji, please understand two things. I personally, I'm against 66A. We have also been debating, government is also considering about it. Laws they are not been made in a day, or they are not been scratched in one day. Two, do not read into like this that we are having two different stands when we were in opposition today. We are still talking about the same thing. We cannot have 66A's draconian hands on us, but while we do this, we have to be responsible. Something which has been written by somebody, if the service providers don't bring it down even after being intimated, and there is some reasonable time which has been given to them, then the service provider has to be accounted for. The person who is writing it has to be asked under the law what he can be done. Now there are other laws which can be taking care of all these kind of things that has been agreed by everybody. We also want to do it. There is a team which is reading about this. I think we cannot jump to conclusions.
Let him finish, Shivam.
Yeah. Shivam, I'm on a phone, so you'll have to give me a little liberty.
Yes. Please continue with it.
Yeah. So understand one thing, that we are the ones who have been benefited most by the internet, the cyberspace.
Absolutely.
Why would we like to gag or do against the people who have voted for us? This is the biggest constituency which we have. So we are very careful about it. We are very responsible about it. Each of us, we every day in and out think about it, how we can have this place to be a better place to work on, and also how we can be reasonable. But lately, if you see, there are individuals who can write which can be inflammatory. There are individuals who may write which is not in the good taste. When I say good taste, it is illegal or illogical. When if it is illogical, then you just have to protest under general laws, and the service provider can write a spam. But if it is illegal, which is against the nation, if it is treachery, if there is something which is missing, then there itself the law has to be taken care of. See, we are not going overboard like the previous government, whereby you jump and arrest somebody who has just written against Chidambaram's son. We are not doing something like that. But we are saying that we will have to be responsible.
Yeah, but Vinit, sorry to intervene. Vinit, the problem, I think you got disconnected when Pavan was talking about the issue of responsible. What is responsible writing? Who is going to judge what is responsible? See, we have been discussing this for I don't think we have yet to find a solution to it. And now if you're going to talk of responsible writing, the same questions come up, what is responsible writing and who is going to decide what is responsible?
Naturally, the law of the land provides what is responsible. And I respect Pavanji. I have met Pavanji in Hyderabad a couple of months back. I just recollected. We both had a very nice discussion on this, wherein the Dominex when we met. And I think that the government and the rules and regulations provide for what is called as responsible writing. The officer who books has been defined. Who will be booking it? What I'm urging through your channel to the people is that don't read too much about the same statements. We are against 66A. Our stand is very firm. We are thinking about doing away with it. But while we talk about this, we will also have to understand how do we take care of this maniac which can come up tomorrow. It's
what about but what about the problem of the internet service providers? They have a different issue altogether now. Now the takedown issue, when they say that why are you bringing us into it? We don't have control.
I'll answer is one thing. If there is a rail accident, we all expect the rail minister to be answerable for it. If there is an accident on the road, we are expecting the transport minister to be answerable for it. If there is a content which is floating around on a service provider, this thing, and after reasonable notice, if he is not bringing it down, then he should be held responsible. This is my personal and also official answer. Yes, you cannot.
I'll come to Rajesh.
I'll complete the sentence.
Yes, please.
I'll complete the sentence. Otherwise, it will not make sense.
No, please do.
Yes, I agree that it is not possible with the billions and millions of bytes going on the air that instantly they will bring it down. So, but I have seen in my own this thing, I have filed FIR on something which is very derogatory for one of our leaders, very, very senior leaders, and the intentions of the person who put that content on the net was malicious. The FIR was registered, but even after information and the request from the Mumbai police, the service provider took a long 3 months to do that, bring it down. Now here, I was reasonable and I was just only talking to them on the phone. But if you see, even once the police authorities make a request to pull down a data and the service provider does not bring the data down, then it should be considered as to be an act of violation.
Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah.
I think you have.
I'll take one more. I'll just take 30 seconds more.
Okay.
And two, data centers are all abroad. There is a request which has been made available. We can have a localized data center so that there is a sovereign right of my country over the data which is there. All the countries do it. See, we are not like Syria, Iran, or China, which brings in cyber censorship or control over the cyberspace. But at the same time, we cannot allow our people.
Direction. We'll get there soon.
Okay,
yeah.
wait.
No. We cannot allow our citizens to be exposed and being taken care of.
Okay. But Vinit, let me get Rajesh. Yes, Rajesh Charya.
Vineet,
Yeah,
you have rightly pointed out in the last, you have responded to what I was supposed to say, that the things are with the data center, not with the service provider. You told that it takes 3 months to download the data, to remove the data from the content. You know what is the network topology. The moment you are putting anything into the server, that server is creating the images, the mirror, in plenty of server all over the world. And if you start removing the data from all the mirror server, it will take a hell of time. What I am saying is that if you are able to find that the content is residing in such a data center, rather than talking to the service provider and unnecessarily making the issue very big into the media, it is better to directly contact the data center and remove that data content from the international data center or from the domestic data center. In regards to the example you have given about the highway thing and the accident, we are the highway service provider. Here are two things are coming. One is about the data, the user which is requesting. Another is the data center from where the user is extracting the data. How come the highway will come into the picture? Let's assume that if I am abusing you on mobile phone, it means the mobile phone company cannot be held responsible that how the Vineet and Rajesh are abusing to each other.
Okay. Yes, Shivam. Vineet has a point.
I think Rajesh, this is one angle. Very honestly, I don't have an answer right now.
Okay.
And I don't want to sound like a typical politician who would like to jump and answer.
Vineet, I'll come back to you.
And come back on this.
Vineet, I'll come back to you. Let me get Shivam in on this.
You see, the fact of the matter is...
Vineet has a point. We have to take note of the fact that there is huge amount of abusive content on the net.
See, firstly,
how do we control it?
Firstly, thanks to the Telegraph Act, all of IPC CRPC applies to the internet. Okay. Now, why is it that things that I write in a newspaper are not liable to 66A and intermediate liability? We have special draconian laws for the internet which we do not have for other forms of communication. Number one. Number two, 66A. Now, I think the word defamed was used. Okay. Now, we have a defamation law. Why do we need 5 internet laws to cover alleged defamation under which somebody will be arrested even before he's tried and will have to then ask for bail? It's a if you inadvertently kill someone on the road, the punishment is, if you have an accident on the road, the punishment is 2 years. It's non-cognizable offense. If you are charged with 66A,
it can go up to 5
years. You can go up to 5. And it is cognizable, you will have to spend night in jail, and that's how 66A people have gone to jail, even after Modi came to power.
You are saying
the new government, people have gone to jail for 66A. Right?
So you are saying that there is no need for a separate law. Pavan,
the law itself is bad. Even if it's not misused, it's a bad law against the constitution.
Would you agree with Shivam on this? And second thing is about the takedown business. How do you control it? There is a problem. Anybody can face a problem.
Can I tell you the problem with takedown?
1 second. Takedown.
The problem with takedown is that the government tells the ISP to take down something. Let's say the ISP takes it down. But it's my content. I didn't even get to know. I didn't get the right to recourse. I didn't get to go to the court and defend my content and say, no, it can't be taken down. right? So in every which way, free speech is being hurt. The government tells Google, YouTube, ISPs, everybody, websites to take down somebody's content, and that person is not even informed. So I can't even defend my content, right?
Okay. Yes, Pavan.
Well, I think to say that
These are two serious issues which needs to be addressed, and I'm sure Supreme Court is addressing. But we need to discuss this.
Well, one thing is very clear, this is not a perfect law. The information technology law is today one of the three most significant pieces of legislation in Indian history. Why? It's the only mother legislation in India that deals with everything in the electronic form. So if you're using computers, computer systems, computer networks, computer resources, communication devices, as also data and information in the electronic form, you're covered. Section 81 of the IT Act further complicates the matter when it says it's a special law and the provisions of this law prevail over anything inconsistent therewith contained in any other law for the time being in force. So it's a very, very, shall I say,
So IPC, all these things, this overrides that.
Overrides. In the event of a conflict between any law and the IT Act is supreme.
Prevails.
The remaining laws come at a secondary level. The important thing to understand is to say that this is an imperfect law. It was initially only an e-commerce enabling legislation.
Right.
We did some tweaking, some cosmetic changes in 2008.
When initially I remember we were only talking of digital signature or electronic signature.
Exactly, that was the focus of the law.
Yeah.
66A was initially meant to be an anti-spam measure, is that right?
Exactly, and then it came across as in the amendments in 2008, and now we have a variety of coverage of cybercrimes. However, we already made a historical mistake. A majority of cybercrimes today are bailable offences where a person is entitled to bail as a matter of right. That's the reason from 2008 till 2014, we haven't seen any much cybercrime convictions happening in the country.
Okay.
And more significantly, the ability of intrinsically people wanting to delete data.
So actually the real big crimes which happen, they get away. And even if somebody is writing objectionable content, he can land up in jail.
That's the bigger problem. The bigger problems, the bigger crimes are all out which is unregulated, primarily because the law takes a very, very soft view. Let me give you another example. The law has made cyber terrorism as a very heinous offence,
right,
punishable with life imprisonment and fine. But 2008 to 2014, we do not yet have a single recorded case in public domain where this particular provision has been actually invoked. Now the question is of takedown notice. Well, the takedown notice.
You're talking of invoking, not of punishment.
No, there is no punishment. There's not even of invoking. We haven't even a reported case where cyber terror as an offence has actually been registered. Even in the Bangalore cyber attacks, there was no case registered under 66F.
What is the maximum punishment?
Well, 66F or 66A?
A.
66A, the maximum punishment is 3 years and fine. Fine is depending on the discretion of the court. It's a bailable offence.
You see, so now if I say something that you find objectionable or grossly offensive, I'll go to jail for 3 years.
3 years.
Now, even if you say the law is not to be misused, why should it exist at all?
Okay, Vinit, I'm sure you people have taken note of all these things, have been discussing this. Now, when the government goes before the Supreme Court and says that, these things, we have to have this, this takedown notice, reasonable restriction and things like that, isn't this a cause of worry even for you people being part of the ruling party?
See, I'll tell you, restrictions which are unreasonable on the citizens are not being called by a democratic party. We would not like to have any restrictions which are on the basis which are biased or which are uncalled for the citizens. But as I said in my earlier statement, and I've been maintaining something which has been maintaining from last 7-8 years since this law has been come, where there is responsible writing. Now here,
that is why. Vinit, I'm sorry to intervene. This is where the problem starts. When you say what is responsible writing, somebody criticizing Sonia Gandhi will become irresponsible for some people. Somebody criticizing or abusing Modi will become irresponsible for some other people. How do we? That's where the problem lies. Pavan, I want you to come in immediately. I'll come back to you, Vinit.
Sure. Can I answer this?
No, I'll come back to you. Let me get Vinit.
Right now is, in fact, it is now left to the hands of the complainant. The complainant is the sole authority who will determine what you have said is grossly offensive.
So he will complain to the service provider. The service provider has to bring it down.
Not only that, he can also complain directly to the police and get a case registered.
Under the 66A.
And in case if the service provider does not pull the said content down, he can actually sue the service provider in the same capacity as a co-accused. And he can get an order from the court. And the courts are now routinely passing orders under the IT rules, by means of which service providers are now mandated to remove content which is in violation of the IT Act.
So as Shivam was pointing out, there is no right of for me to defend.
Shivam is absolutely accurate.
Right to defense.
Yeah, currently in the current scheme of things, you don't have an immediate right to defend in case your content is pulled down.
After it's pulled down,
however,
then you can.
Once it's pulled down and you are notified about it,
but you
then you can
not
agitate.
Be notified about it.
There's also possibility.
We do so many things on the internet.
Exactly. Okay, Vinay, yes, please come back now. I want you to give a perspective on what has been said now.
See, I'll tell you. Once the content is put and somebody comes up with a complaint, or somebody feels that this is an irresponsible writing, I'm talking, this is the lighter side, and something which is against the nation, which is against the interests of this larger society, this should be brought down. Two, there can be a relief provided by the court that once the writer goes on this thing, or the service provider goes to court and says, no, this is responsible writing, let us have it. Then I think the courts can allow that to go back. So till that comes up, because in the internet you cannot allow the damage to continue. So
but one second, you're saying that you cannot allow the damage to continue. Even in what the government has given the petition to the Supreme Court yesterday, it says that once the content is, somebody objects to the content, the service provider has to remove it within 36 hours. 3 days is a long time for anybody to get defamed, and so how can you stop anybody from being defamed?
See, it is like this. There has to be reasonable time given to both. Now, we can go on debating on what is called as reasonable time. It is 3 hours, 3 days, or 3 months, or 3 years. Which can debate, and this can be technologically established, and the courts will take decision of that, or the executives can take decision what is called as reasonable time to bring it down. But the contention of the entire act should be seen in the spirit where the government wants it, that it should be a responsible writing. We are against censorship. We are against not allowing people to express. Somebody said that, what do you say when something is written against Sonia Gandhi or something is written against my party?
Yes.
When there is a view against somebody, that does not matter. When I write that I do not like what Girishji say, it is okay. My view, and which is inside the box of called as healthy discussion. But if I use abusive words for Girishji, if I use something which are derogatory remarks to his faith, religion, caste, profession, what he's doing, that is not tolerable. I think in that
we are aware of it. We are aware of it, but the only problem, Vineet, is that whether there is any clarity on what needs to be done. Rajesh, very quickly, we are running out of time.
Can I just give you 1 second? Can I take 1 second?
We are running out, completely running out of time. Very quickly.
I think this kind of discussions on the television will only help us to understand what the larger society feels. It cannot be 4 or 5 people sitting in the North Block and deciding.
Absolutely.
And I think this kind of discussion, this kind of deliberations will enlighten us, and then we can go back, enlighten, and share these views with our
Okay. Rajesh, very quickly, Rajesh, very quickly. What is it that
main issue about the reasonable and responsible writing is the interpretation. How somebody is interpreting that reasonable writing, because I think I am writing reasonably, but in your opinion it is not reasonable. Then how the court will take his own course, and how the service provider will react.
Exactly. Service provider gets caught in the middle. Pavan, very quickly, there is also, we didn't have time to discuss the issue of, when foreign servers which are abroad, how do you control them? So anyway, quickly, you think that the Supreme Court, which is hearing the matter, will be able to provide some relief to this issue?
Absolutely. The Supreme Court is seized of this matter, and it's only going to examine 66A in the light of the parameters of the Constitution. And to the extent the parameters of 66A fulfill the basic requirements of the Constitution, the same is likely to be upheld. But to the extent that 66A goes far beyond the scope of the Constitution, I think those are areas that could potentially be coming under challenge in the Supreme Court. And more significantly, bigger issues. How do we deal with the internet jurisdiction? How do we deal with all these intermediaries located outside the territorial boundaries of India, and ensuring that they comply with the parameters of the IT Act and rules and regulations?
Okay, I think on that note we need to end. It has been a very interesting discussion. This is a very complicated issue, but still a very important issue. We'll wait for what the Supreme Court will come out with on this issue. Till then, we'll have to wait and watch. Thanks to all my guests, Pavan Duggal, Shivam Vij, Rajesh Acharya and Vineet Goenka. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue in Big Picture same time tomorrow.